Hello, Spiritists. It's a pleasure to be here again. Kardec Radio on Wednesdays at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. Such a great time we're having with this, what we're bringing. It's called, again, Spiritism, a closer look. And this is a weekly program where we are going to be discussing several different topics within the Spiritism, especially those who are usually not well explained in Spiritist centers, in talks, in lectures. So we would like to bring those to go deep and really study at length. And the topic that we are studying right now is evolution. Evolution, like I said, is huge, huge, huge. It takes a long time to go through all of it. And we are all committed to do this. And thank you for participating with us. You can always, I encourage you actually to post your comments and suggestions and questions. If you're watching us live, you can do this live. If you're not watching us live, if you're watching a recorded program, you can always go to kardec.com and put your questions in there, your suggestions and your comments. And we really encourage you to do this. It's going to help us and you. Okay, so again, thank you very much for participating with us today. Okay, this is our third program. On the first two programs, we discussed the theories of evolution. We spoke about Darwin and Lamarck and scientists trying to figure out how evolution happened and the problems that they faced, and a lot of those things we touched. And it might seem a little bit strange. Why did we start there? And I think I addressed this last time. We need to know where Spiritism stands in relation to these theories. We speak about Darwin, we hear about his origin of species and so and so, and then we started there to see where we are. And we did this in the first two meetings. This is our third meeting. Again, at the end of every meeting, we place a question. You're going to get the link at the end of this transmission here. The question is up for you to cast your answers for 1 week. So it goes from Wednesday's night, Wednesday's evening, until the next Wednesday in the middle of the afternoon, Eastern Time. So again, I encourage you to participate with us. Cast your answers and be a part of it. It's good and it's fun, and everybody's helping everybody. There's no one better than the other here. We're all learning. We're all here to, know more about Spiritism. So we're going to start with last week's question. That was a question that we posted last week. Which of the following states that mutations are random? And we have 5 options here. Lamarckism comes from Jean-Baptiste Lamarck, Spiritism, Darwin or Darwinism or New Darwinism, all branches of science, and this option here, oh boy, I might have to review last meeting's video. Okay, I don't know who answered that, if you did, but that was one of the options. Okay, let's go for the real answer. Where is, what is the correct answer? Okay, mutations are random. That's a Darwin thing. Darwin gave us the, he was the first one, just to recap a little bit, 1 minute. He was the one that, who in 1859 brought the answers to questions that we had been asking for centuries and centuries about evolution, animals and plants, how things could, how animals progress, if there's one species that goes into the other. And then when he brought these answers, he actually started to bring light at the end of the tunnel. The problem is, he stated that these mutations were random. Okay, these mutations being random, that kind of goes against us Spiritists. And we were able to explain why last week. It has to do with the fact that in Spiritism, okay, evolution happens in 2 worlds. So random mutations we call, or he called them random, and those who follow him, of course, they are called random because we cannot identify the source. That's why they are called random. But the source actually is, as it explained beautifully in Spiritism, it comes from the spiritual realm. These changes are planned and designed, engineered, we could say, on the other side, and then they are implemented on the material plane. And that's why there's a lot of these lost links and lost connections in science. A lot of the answers that we would like to have in the scientific world are missing because of that. So evolution in two worlds. And then that's exactly where we stopped last time. And then we said, well, if Spiritism talks about evolution and it's evolution in two worlds, we need to, the method to study evolution in Spiritism cannot be the same method used to study from the scientific point of view. It can't be, because otherwise you're going to get to the same conclusions. So we said, that's what we said last time. Next meeting, which is today, we're going to start from scratch, from the core of everything, from creation. Spiritism cannot explain all of this, and it will. We're going to go through this. It's going to take us several months to go through this, but yes, we will. And we are going to start then with what I would call chapter 2, okay, in this third meeting. And I'm going to call this the creation. The creation. What we're going to do here today, in our timing today, is go on a very brief overall of all things, because every single thing that you see here, that you hear me speaking today, is going to become, if not more than one meeting, at least one. So we have a lot of material to cover from what we are going to mention. Today we're just mentioning things. We're going to bring things for a long discussion that's going to take several months. So let's get started. Creation, right? Okay. How does it all start? It's on the Spirit's book. Okay, first part, first question. Right? What is God? And God is this supreme intelligence, the first cause or primary cause of all things. Everything comes ultimately from God. The entire creation comes from God. And in Spiritism, it's explained to us that from God, two things, I'm going to use the word emanate. Two things emanate from God. First, spiritual principle. Again, we are mentioning words and things. We're not going to go very deep in any of them today. That's not even the purpose. Otherwise, it would be very confusing. We're going to give you an overall of what's coming, okay? So from God, two things come. Two things emanate. Spiritual principle. What is a spiritual principle? In simple words, for our first touch on what it means, it contains the basic seeds of everything that's going to be intelligence one day, including intelligence at the level that we are, spirits and everything. Everything, intelligence, is in there somehow. Okay. The other thing that emanates from God is what we call the universal cosmic fluid. And in it, there's another principle, which is called the material principle. What is the material principle? Let's use a similar definition to what we did for spiritual principle. Spiritual principle contains the very seeds of everything that's going to become intelligence. Material principle contains the very seeds of anything and germs of everything that one day is going to be matter. Okay, so we aligned the two definitions. It's going to be a lot easier for us, at least for now, to keep up with the definitions. Now, everything, the entire creation, takes place when the spiritual principle operates upon the material principle and the universal cosmic fluid. The entire creation is in this universal cosmic fluid. So when the spiritual principle becomes to operate and manipulate this fluid in which there's everything that's going to be matter one day, that's how things are created. Everything. From the chair that you are in, from anything you have in your house, to the most complicated things, planets, galaxies, everything, absolutely everything occurred or occurs because there is some sort of intelligence acting upon some sort of matter. Okay? How does it work? How does the spiritual principle, which, as you see here on the picture, let's just say it was just created by God. So let's say God just created the spiritual principle. How does it know to create, let's say, a chair? Well, it's a long, long, long way. It's like us going through school, elementary school, then high school, and so and so and so until you graduate, and that's how we learn things. The spiritual principle has to learn how to operate and act upon the material principle. How does it learn? Trial and error. Basically, using current words, trial and error. So the spiritual principle is going to start from the very core of the material principle. What is in the very core of matter? Well, let's go back to history of humanity. In the old times, Dalton came with the idea. Actually, Dalton was the first one to try to dive into the atom and understand the atom. So in those days, in the 1800s, for all purposes, the atom was still the smallest thing ever in terms of matter. Now we know it's far from being truth. Not that it's not truth, but it's far from being the smallest part. So what do we know today? The atom is composed of at least 3 main subparticles: protons, electrons, and neutrons. And that was good enough for the 1800s and the early 1900s. But then we found other things. Technology gets better. We have more equipment. We have more dedication from different scientists in different parts of the world. So we found that protons, electrons, and neutrons were not the smallest parts that we knew. These 3 particles were formed by other things. These other things have names, and names are not easy. This is a deep study in physics and quantum physics. We're not going to go there because it's not needed. But the 3 main particles under the layer of electrons, neutrons, and protons are called, you see here on your screen, quarks, leptons, and bosons. We're not going to go too much into this because that's quantum physics. For us, spiritists, all we need to know is this is the smallest particles that we know of. Okay, there are subparticles actually here, but let's consider these as the smallest ones. So the spiritual principle has to learn how to operate quarks, leptons, bosons to form other things. It's like a Lego blocks. Okay, if I give you a box of, let's say, 100 pieces of Lego blocks, it doesn't mean anything to you. But as you learn, as you try through trial and error, you're able to assemble little things. In the beginning, maybe just three blocks. You can bind them together, and then you're going to be doing more complex things. Trial and error. So the spiritual principle has to learn how to operate the basic blocks, in quotes, of matter, which are these things here that I'm showing you: quarks, leptons, and bosons. It takes time, of course. Once this learning process takes place and the spiritual principle gets to a point where now it is able to manipulate quarks, leptons, and bosons to form protons, neutrons, and electrons, then it goes to the next level. So it's like a graduation, if you will. So the spiritual principle goes to level 2. It's like you graduated from elementary school, you go to high school. You go up one level. So now the spiritual principle is able to do more than it could do before because it's more experienced. It learned how to operate the basic particles, and now it is able to form electrons, able to form protons, able to form neutrons. And it's going to start continue developing and learning and trying until it goes to the next level up, which is, well, now I'm able to use and combine protons, neutrons, and electrons to form something else. That something else, one level up, is the atom that we thought long time ago that was the smallest particle available. It's not. So, the spiritual principle will get there, but it has to learn other things before that. When he learns how to form atoms by using his prior experience, it's going to be able to take more than one atom and put them together and assemble something else. Those are called molecules. The spiritual principle has to learn to get there. Like I said, it takes time. You can see here on your screen, there's a lot of trial and error. It's not something that happens on a snap of fingers. No way. So the spiritual principle now knows how to form molecules. Now that it knows how to form molecules, you will be able to combine these molecules to form something else, to go to the next level up, which are the minerals. So now the spiritual principle is able to create the minerals. And if you study chemistry, or we know that from high school, we have several different minerals. They are listed on a periodic table of elements, and we know about the first 99 of these are very well known. The others are elements that die very easily, so it's very hard to deal with them. But that's for the lab people, not for us spiritists who leave them with their jobs. Okay, so minerals. And can you imagine how much the spiritual principle has to learn so far? We're not even in the beginning. So far, to learn how to create or to form several different types of minerals. And we don't know all of them. The periodic table lists the one we were able to find and to discover. Well, we don't know all of them. So spiritual principle now knows how to create blocks, minerals. And now it's going to go to the next level. Of all the minerals, the one considered the most advanced in terms of this learning that we're speaking here. Okay, please listen to me. We are talking about the spiritual principle, learning how to develop minerals. When it gets to the diamond, then it gets to the most complex of all these minerals to be formed. So when it gets to the diamond, then you learn how to create all the minerals. It's going to go up one level. It's going to go to the next level. What is the next level? Well, the next level changes everything. It has to learn how to use something called vital principle. Why do I say that changes everything? Because prior to the ability of the spiritual principle to use and manipulate the vital principle, everything is inert matter, static. There's no life at all. Only when the spiritual principle learns how to operate and work with the vital principle, then it will use his abilities to infuse life in inert matter. Okay. Again, we are not talking about the vital principle today. We are mentioning things. We are going through a block diagram here. Each one of these things that you see there is going to be a few classes or a few meetings. Once the spiritual principle learns how to use the vital principle, he graduates, he gets a diploma. With that diploma, he gets a new title. And the title is Intelligent Principle. So it goes from spiritual principle to intelligent principle. So it's a nice graduation, by the way. So now it has a new name, intelligent principle. But it will not stop interacting with the material principle to form things. Just as spiritual principle, it is interacting all the time for all that learning. When it becomes intelligent principle, meaning now I know how to infuse life into inert matter, you will continue its journey. You will continue to learn more. You will go to the next levels, which is it's going to operate the crystalline virus. We're going to talk about that in details later. A virus is life. It's a form of life. Right? So you will start from for the most simplest forms of life. Then you go through viruses, you go through the most simple types of plants in the plant kingdom. Then it goes higher in complexity. It learns how to operate more complex cells in the plant's kingdom and forming more complex trees and plants. And it just goes, it doesn't go back. The learning never stops. It's a constant thing. Of course, it takes a long time. It takes effort, if you will, right? So you will get to a point where it knows how to operate life into the plant's kingdom until it's what we can consider its superior reference in the plant's kingdom. And then it's going to go to the next level. What is the next level? The next level is transitioning over to the animal kingdom. So the intelligent principle, right? Now it's intelligent principle, is going to start dealing with different cells that now are classified or belong to the animal kingdom. So here you see some of them: yeast, bacteria, amoeba. Those are the most simple unicellular organisms in the animal kingdom. The intelligent principle will have to learn how to deal with this, how to operate these things, how to infuse life, forming these small unicellular organisms. It's a learning process. Again, once it gets to that level, okay, once it gets to the unicellular organisms in the animal kingdom, it's going to go to more complex cellular structures, other animals. Still, some are very simple, but of course, you're going to trace the entire animal kingdom. We're going to get to very complex ones. As it develops and it goes into the non-unicellular organisms, okay, so more complex structures in the animal kingdom, they will form something that's called monad. So a monad is, you can consider a monad as a group. Okay, so there's a monad for every type of animal with the more complex structures in the animal kingdom. So, for example, you see here in your on this little design that I did here, this sketch, it's a monad for crustaceans. That's not the only one. There are monads, millions of them, for all types of structures in the animal kingdom. And the intelligent principle is going to have to learn how to deal with monads and form these things. So here I'm showing you monads for other animals, maybe fish, reptiles, all of them, mammals. There's several different types of animals in the animal kingdom. Okay, so then it's going to evolve based on its ability to deal with these things, creating these cells and operating life in these organisms. And then it's going to get to a point where this intelligent principle is so intelligent that it can go on his own. Like our kids, for example, right? They are very young. They depend on us 100% almost when they are babies. And they grow up, and we are all there all the time, giving them support, making them, making things possible for them because they depend on us. And with time, they're going to be a little more independent as they go along. So with 4 years old, for example, they can do things they couldn't do when they were 1 year old, maybe 6 months old. When they are 10 years old, they can do things now that he couldn't do or she couldn't do with 5 or 6 years old. And there's going to be a point where they can go by themselves. They do not depend on us, parents, anymore whatsoever. They become adults. The very same thing takes place here. These monads, they develop to a point where there's going to be a time where the intelligent principle can go on his own. What this means is he graduates again and he gets a new name. He is now a spirit. He is individualized from the monads, which are groups. So instead of a group now, we're going to have an individual all by himself or herself, responding to his own acts, able to do things, to make decisions, to do things for himself, take care of himself, understanding, has reason. Okay, so this is another level of graduation. That's when he becomes a spirit. So there's a limit between, there's a transition between the animal kingdom and the humans. Spirits are for humans. That limit is what we call the anthropoids. Again, we're just mentioning. We're not going into details today. It's going to take us time to get there because we need to go through everything else that we saw so far in details. That's the purpose of our meetings here every week. Okay, then the spirit is now graduation. It's an individualization of the intelligent principle. And just like this intelligent principle, just like this spiritual principle, you will not stop interacting with the material principle to form things, to create things. But the things the spirit is going to create in interacting with the material principle are much more complex than what the spiritual principle could do, what the intelligent principle could do. And you will, this spirit will develop, learn and everything, interacting with the matter or material principle, and it will learn, it will evolve. And it will be able to create things such as thought, spirit, physical body, and many, many, many other things. So then the first thing that comes to mind is this, which is something a lot of people have a hard time understanding. Hopefully with this structure here that I'm showing you, it's going to be a lot easier for you. We hear Spirit Emmanuel telling us several times, thought is matter. And we go like, how come? How come thought is matter? Well, thought depends on the material principle. Thought is a result of the interaction of the spirit creating, manipulating the material principle and creating thought. You see, the only thing that on the left side here of your screen, spiritual principle, intelligent principle, and spirit, that's the intelligent part. Everything else in creation depends on the material principle. Thought depends on being able to manipulate the material principle to create the thought. Same for paraspirit. So when we hear in Spiritism, the paraspirit is matter. Is matter in the sense that, not that matter in the sense that, well, let me touch it, let me smell it, let me look at it. No, that's not it. It's not something that we can see, but it depends on the material principle. That's why Emmanuel tells us it is a form of matter. Physical body, that's a form of matter, different than a paraspirit, different than a thought, and so different that we can see it because it is visible to us. We can touch, our 5 senses can detect physical bodies. So we can look at a person and see another physical body. Okay, we can, our 5 senses allow us to interact with the material world. But everything that the intelligence creates, it creates using the material principle. If the intelligence, what I mean by intelligence is any of the 3 boxes on your left side here. If intelligence can think, the thought is created using a material principle. If the intelligence can create a form, a perispirit, it depends on being able to interact upon the material principle. That's one of the, I think, at least for me, I get a lot of these questions. What is this thing about thought being matter? That's what it is, folks. That's what we're trying to bring over here to you. Okay, so now let's understand what all of this means to us. Okay, all this here in yellow that you see, this whole rectangle in yellow, is the object of study in science. There are several different academic sciences, several branches of science. So here are some of them. Quantum mechanics. What is quantum mechanics is going to study? Official definition, right? Study of the structure of the matter. It's going to study bosons, leptons, quarks, all of that. Physics. What is physics is going to study? Anything, you know, the behavior of matter, how we do things, how matter interacts with itself. Chemistry, biology, anthropology, paleontology, and the list is huge, 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 huge. So science studies what is in that yellow rectangle. Everything else is studied not by science, studied by Spiritism. So we study things like morality. Science does not study morality. Science does not study the spirit world, because that's on the green part, not on the yellow part. Science does not study the existence of God and the spirits. It's not what they're here for. So sometimes we Spiritists, we put a kind of an expectation on ourselves. Oh, one day science is going to find God. That's not what science is here for. At the very best, they're going to find there's something else that we don't know yet. And that's all it is. God, spirits, morality, evolution, all of those, these are things studied by Spiritism, not science. And it becomes so interesting that Allan Kardec will tell us all of this. Maybe visually looking at what I did here before is going to help you a little bit. But Allan Kardec puts in his work on the Genesis, he will say, science per se has its object, the study of the laws of the material principle. Remember, the yellow rectangle, people. The special object of Spiritism is the knowledge of the laws of the spiritual principle. Now, here's the interesting thing. How do we, Spiritists, study the laws of the spiritual principle, the laws of the intelligent principle, the laws of the spirit world? If this intelligence only develops itself or evolves by interacting upon matter, so we have to study in part the material world, so we understand and comprehend that interaction. So that's what Allan Kardec says on the next phrase on the book. Now, since the latter, okay, look at the text below, above. What is the latter? The spiritual principle. Since the spiritual principle is one of the forces of nature which reacts incessantly and reciprocally upon the material principle, it follows that knowledge of one of them cannot be complete without the knowledge of the other. Did it sound beautiful to you or just to me? That's a rationality of Allan Kardec. That's a rationality of the Spirit's book. And the Genesis and all his work, he is explaining why we have to study certain things. Why is it important for Spiritists to comprehend certain things about morality, to study the body and diseases? Why is it important to us to understand very basic principles we're not physicists. Very basic principles of, for example, quantum mechanics. It helps understand. It helps us to understand that interaction. Everything in creation comes from that interaction. And then he completes his thought with one of the most known phrases in Spiritism that we say it out loud all the time. Spiritism and science complete each other. They do not compete. They complete each other. Science without Spiritism, think about the diagram, okay? Science, the yellow rectangle. The yellow rectangle without Spiritism is completely unable to explain certain phenomena solely by means of the laws of matter. And why is that? Because the laws of matter are responding to the interaction from something that comes from the other side, which is the green part when I showed you the diagram. On the other hand, Spiritism without science would lack support and control. I'm trying to just convey the message, at least for today. That was our goal today, to get to this point. Why is Allan Kardec? Can we have a black and white answer on why is Allan Kardec telling us that they go hand by hand? They go side by side, studying both. So do we depend on science? Yes, because it's not our purpose as Spiritists, right, to study the principles of, for example, quantum physics, unless your professional, as incarnated, is a quantum physicist. It is their thing. It is not our cup of tea, right? We work and we study the interaction, but we depend on them. And they depend on us too to explain certain things that come from outside their realm. Well, hopefully I was able to get the message across, make you understand the rationale of it. What is behind the scenes when Allan Kardec brings us something like this? Do we need to study? Do we need more information from science? As much as we can. We want all the information. The more information they give us, the more information science finds out and discovers, the more chances we have as Spiritists to comprehend creation. So, hopefully, you like what we discussed today. It requires a little bit of thinking. It's a lot to go through. It's a lot of information. It's not easy. It's challenging at times. Okay, so let me just finalize saying, if we look at this image again, that's the image. We're going to bring this over several times throughout our meetings. But this represents us Spiritists trying to study Spiritism. Beginning all the way on the top where God is. And Allan Kardec takes from here and he's going to say, let's make things simple. There is a spiritual principle and a material principle at the lowest level. Lowest meaning, or actually we could understand the highest level. Highest because God is usually taken as a high thing. So at the highest level, there's this triangle. When you come down to the lowest level where the spirit is, then we have God, spirit, and matter. So we have two things going on at the same time here. God, spiritual principle, and material principle. Or if you want to get to the next layer, God, spiritist, spirit, and matter. God, spirit, and matter is what is considered the universal Trinity. And that's question 27 in the Spirit's book. If you go back to the Spirit's book, you're going to see this. Allan Kardec asking the spirits and the explanation about the creation. There are three things: God, spirit, and matter. Question 27, Spirit's book. And hopefully all this visual that I produce here for you will help you understand and go through these questions. There's a set of questions from 22 to 29 that will touch on this thing. So hopefully that will make it better for you. Okay. I know that's a lot. It was a lot for me too. It still is. So pause to think. It is a lot of information. This pause is going to be relatively long. This pause is going to take 1 week. We will be here next week to continue talking about creation. Okay, we're going to start getting into the details of everything that we saw here today. And don't forget, we will have a question placed for you to answer and participate with us. So question of the week, you see the link here on your screen, okay? And if you are on a computer, if you want to use the barcode, the QR code on the top left of your screen, you can do that. It works as well, okay? I hope to see you next week. It was really great seeing you today, and I'll see you next week. Thank you very much. As always, comments and questions are encouraged. KardecRadio.com. And if you're live, watching us live, don't go away. Don't go away. She's coming. Yeah, Simone Neto, she's coming. She's going to talk to us at 8 p.m. in just 15 minutes about the universal truth. So take care, all of you, and I'll see you next week. Thank you very much.